Hey you, welcome back to the channel. And guys, this episode, this finale of American Gods, I just thought was awesome. We had a little bit of controversy a bit about last week's episode of Prayer for Mad Sweeney. Some people didn't believe it did a good job of staying on course with the book. Some people thought it was a little bit too long and drawn off course. But whatever you believed about last week's episode, what is clear is this week's episode, I think everybody can agree, did a lot of things right. I think it did everything right. And wow, guys, we got basically we always get the Coming to America stories. No different in this week's episode, but this time we get Bilquis Coming to America episode, how she got here. And I was very interested in that because I was just trying to figure out where she fit in to the story. We hadn't really seen Bilquis. It was just really one episode we saw her in, and we were kind of seems left with more questions than answers in that. But we get to pick up with Shadow and Mr. Wednesday, and they're in the company. They're actually on their way to Kentucky, but they're in the company of one of my favorite characters, the god Anansi, or Mr. Nancy. So we get to in every scene he's in. It's just great. I always get excited, and I think kind of what lets me know that the episode scored A+ with me is the fact that I want to watch it over and over again, and I'm probably gonna have to watch this maybe two to three times. And I didn't feel like that with last week's episode, and that's not saying that I didn't think last week's episode was good. A lot of people liked that. I thought it was a great story, but I just thought it dragged on a little bit too long off the main course of the story. And I want to always have my bearings about me in this show, to where at least my attention is, I believe where it needs to be. But anyway, we get this great scene with Mr. Nancy, and he wants to tell a story. But Mr. Wednesday is like, oh, please, no, not right now. We're busy, Mr. Nancy. And he's Mr. Nancy being persistent. It's like, let me tell my story. And so Mr. Nancy gets to tell the story. And in the story, he's telling us about how Bilquis got to America. And of course, in Mr. Nancy scenes, they're just so, he's doing this, he's actually making these beautiful suits, and the fabric he's using, I don't know if these spiders are spitting the fabrics or what have you, but there's spiders everywhere. He's making these suits, because they're on their way to, as we got to see, visit the goddess Easter or Stara or Istarte, whichever version you want to think about her. But so we get this gorgeous jazz piece while Mr. Nancy's doing all this. But he tells the story about Bilquis, and we start off, looks like it's ancient times with Bilquis, and Bilquis she's doing on a large scale what we saw her do in the earlier episodes, when she's kind of like this succubant, or she's consuming the essence of people in her very interesting sexual way, making her body a portal and bringing them inside of her. And we get to see that in ancient times. She really had perfected. I mean, she was really good at it. She could do it in an entire room at once, where they worshipped her and they kind of turned into this ooze, and the ooze would just she would just consume this ooze, and she would be just powerful. And we got to see the greatness of her power in ancient times, and her progression throughout history, and where she fit in. And it kind of jumps from that to, looks like, the 1970s, and this is the height of the disco, the disco era, you know. And so what's happening is, you know, she's partying up. She's still the goddess of love, sex, and things like this. But what's happening is we get to see that Bilquis is thriving because she's adapting. She's adapting with the times, you know, with the changes. And she's still thriving because there's still love, there's still sex, and she's still quite very relevant. And what was very interesting is it's taking place in Tehran. And I'm like, okay, Tehran's in Iran. And I'm like, okay, so what's the significance of this? Because we get to see these guys rush in with guns on the disco floor where she's having this very intimate dance scene with this woman from Tehran, Iran. And they're rushing in, and there's guns everywhere, and there's fighting. And what was significant about it, this is the 1970s, 1980s, so you're thinking, well, what's going on in Iran? It's the importance of Iran. But as we, you know, if you look at history and you think about it, this is during the overthrow of the Shah of Iran. It's been done by the Ayatollah. And what I also found very interesting about this is how Iran looked. You know, Iran at this period of time was very decadent society, a very free society, because the Shah of Iran at the time was believed to be an American puppet. And so a lot of American culture and Western culture was in Iran. And of course, a lot of the Iranian people believed this was leading to the destruction of their world and their culture, that they were no longer on the course of the Islamic faith, but they had let the evils of the West creep in, and thus they were losing favor with Allah and the gods, and they needed to do something about the Shah, so they actually end up overthrowing the Shah. So this is all going on while Bilquis is in you know, Iran, and she's enjoying kind of this freedom of expression and love and sex, and she's thriving on it. But when this happens, this is shutting all that down, because of course with Iran now being under this Islamic state, under the Ayatollah, none of that's going to be allowed. You're not going to be allowed to go to disco and do all this stuff. So this is going to be a place where Bilquis thrive. So the young lady she's with, you know, apparently she doesn't want to be a part of that world as well. So she grabs Bilquis and brings her to America with her, and she's worshiping Bilquis, and they're on the plane. And this is how Bilquis gets to America. I found that very interesting. And Bilquis is America, and she's still pretty much thriving. You know, it's in America. It's at the height of a lot of the free sex and love of the 70s, the 1980s. So she's still doing very quite well. But the problem is, we're also getting at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, and we start to see how everybody's starting to withdraw from all this freedom of sexual expression, and everybody's being careful now. Nobody wants to die, you know, and so Bilquis can no longer really thrive. She can no longer really thrive, you know, on those course of events. And unfortunately, she's actually seeing her, the woman who brought her to America, she's actually seeing her dying of what appears to be HIV or AIDS or some sexually transmitted disease in the hospital. And this is pretty much, you know, devastating to Bilquis. I think she now at this point realizes that it's pretty much the beginning of the end, right? And so she walks out of that hospital, but things get worse. They get a lot worse for Bilquis, because, you know, we're witnessing on television actually the end of one of her temples that's being destroyed in what looks like to be Iraq or something like that. So we're witnessing that, and this is like pretty much a final blow to Bilquis. Now she's getting depowered. she's becoming this this deity now that you know, is no longer you know, relevant to people. She's losing a lot of that power, and so she gets approached by technology. And you know, it's very interesting. It's funny because Technology Boy is offering her this kind of this way out. You know, he's going, well, hey, and he's showing her. It's funny. He's showing her these applications of, like, you know, a lot of these different you know, dating sites or social media sites, and he's basically you know, converting this until this could be her new form of worship. We know what a lot of dating applications and Instagram models, and you know, he's saying the person with the most followers is getting the most dedication, admiration, things like that. So this is a new power source for Bilquis. So he kind of puts her onto that, gets her into this new world, and you know, in a sense, it's seeming now pretty much like Bilquis, you know, is working for the new gods. She's in league with the new gods, and so I just found that all that very, very interesting. But you know, we get Wednesday and we get Shadow, and they're headed to Kentucky, and Kentucky is, you know, they're actually headed to the house of, we can learn, Easter or Star, the goddess of spring, and rebirth and various things like that. And at her house when they arrive, you know, what's interesting is Mr. Wednesday, he runs over these bunnies. He's going, he just runs over the bunnies. But what I found interesting is Easter uses the bunnies in a similar fashion like Mr. Wednesday uses the ravens. They seem to be a network of communication, you know, for her, much like Wednesday. But also, which kind of confirmed a lot of suspicion from last week, is that the bunny rabbit that was, you know, involved with the accident that killed Laura was tied to the goddess Easter, you know, because we've seen all these various bunny rabbits, so that was kind of some way letting us know she was involved, you know, in the situation, as it were. But you know, of course, Mr. Wednesday, he's normal mission of trying to recruit old gods for the impending battle of the new gods. But he has a similar problem to the one he had when he tried to recruit Vulcan, and that is these old gods are still that he's trying to get. I guess probably some powerful left. They are derived because they've made connections with the new gods. They've made agreements, and it's no different. We get with Easter. It's no different in that she's kind of made this deal, it seems, with the new gods to kind of peacefully coexist with them, to work in unison with the new gods. And we get all these various versions of Jesus that have been discussed in earlier episodes by Mr. Wednesday. We've seen, and just very interesting stuff. So you know, Easter, as we well know, shares her day. She shares her day with Jesus. You know, with the Christian faith. You know, looking back when I was a little kid, I just always recall that I could never figure out what that bunny, what that Easter rabbit had to do with Jesus, you know, in the Christian faith. It was just, you know, it never really dawned on me as a kid. I just, you know, that that these were things that really, you know, did a lot to do with each other. And you get older later, you start to, you know, ask questions like, well, what's going on here? And you get to find out, you know, a lot of ties between old religions, pagan religions, mixing of Christianity with these religions, mixing of the festivals, various things like that. The bunny rabbit, you know, Easter being also the goddess of rebirth, spring, dawn. And that's another very interesting thing you know, as we left off with Matt Sweeney and Laura last week, and he's speaking about resurrection, you know, in my mind, I'm still thinking about Jesus. I'm thinking that he's going to try to take Laura Moon to Jesus and somehow convince Jesus to resurrect her, because I'm still thinking of Jesus as an old God, which maybe Jesus is a version of both old God and new gods, and it's, you know, he can be you know, probably both. But it's Easter he's talking about. So for some reason that just didn't click with me, but that's what's going on. And so you know, they're on their way there as well. Mr. Wednesday's trying to get Easter on his side, and Mad Sweeney's trying to get the goddess Easter to resurrect Laura. One succeeds, one fails. Mr. Wednesday actually succeeds, but Mr. Wednesday does it in a very interesting way. He does it in a way where he's spinning the story about how Vulcan died. He's actually spinning that story by saying that the new gods killed Vulcan. And, you know, putting all this suspicion in Easter that maybe she could be next, and various things like that. But another interesting point I just want to just touch on that may be connected to this or not, I'm not 100% sure, but as I study my mythology, and I haven't done any research on this, you know, prior to the videos, my videos, as you can probably tell, are basically my videos are right off the dome. You know, I'm speaking, I don't do any editing, I just go straight with it on all my videos, so please bear with me. But I believe in mythology, Easter may have very well been a suitor of Vulcan. I think in Greek mythology, between Aphrodite and Vulcan, there was a union. So I don't know, but whether it's connected or not, that resonated with Ostara quite a bit, and it made her where she basically, you know, was coming over to Mr. Wednesday's side. We cut the Mad Sweeney and Laura. We also get to find out that although Easter owes Mad Sweeney a favor, she's willing to do the resurrection. After getting more information on Laura, she finds out she can't do it because Laura has been killed by a god. So killed by a god, there's something she can't undo, there's something she can't get involved with, or it gets really, really messy. But it's interesting at Easter's residence here, as she's celebrating Easter along with all the Jesus or Jesus, or Jesus, the plural form of I don't know what the plural form of Jesus is, but all these various Jesus groups of deities that you know, it's all merging together. And so of course Mr. Wednesday, he wants to disrupt that because he needs Easter to see that maybe things aren't as great as she think they are. You know, that people aren't really worshiping her in her name. It's all these kind of go-betweens, and it's not the same. It's not the same as really giving Easter back her day. And so Mr. Wednesday is doing a really good job of it, and he's in the Jesus deities, and he's telling them that, hey, you basically stole her day and things like that. And of course, many versions of Jesus, he's a very what's the word for? He's always shown as a very understanding, nice Jesus. So not like a warrior type Jesus. He's always seen as this very understanding, caring, loving, forgiving, and nice guy Jesus, or the buddy Jesus, as they, you know, as I think that came from a movie called oh geez, what's the movie with Matt Damon where they're angels? It'll come to me in a second. And in the comments, guys, please put that. Oh, it's called Dogma. It's called Dogma. But they got the buddy Jesus, you know, a pin. And so these Jesus seem like buddy Jesus all throughout the show. So they're very upset about, you know, taking Easter's day. They're, you know, and it's just, you know, pretty crazy stuff. But also what it was a quick little shot, and it didn't dawn on me at first. It just kind of came to me. I didn't know who this was supposed to be, but it was a woman in the home of Easter breastfeeding. And when these various Jesus figures walk around, they have have these halos on their head, this glowing light, and they're divine and various things like that. But they had this woman, she was breastfeeding, and I was like, okay, that's kind of, I'm thinking, well, maybe that's symbolizing some type of nurturing of the Easter goddess, birth and life. And I guess it could all be that. But at the same time, she starts to get this glowing halo over on her head. And, so I started thinking, that looks familiar. I'm like, is that the Madonna? And she might have been the Madonna, and that's also very interesting because, again, as we touched on earlier, a lot of Christian faith mixed with a lot of the pagan cultures, and it made it acceptable to the early ancient times, because if you really think about it, just imagine if today the United States government could stop freedom of religion, and they did, and they went, well, you know what, guys, everybody today who's a Christian is going to have will have to be Christian. So if they said everybody had to be Christian and they made it the law, and if you were another religion, like say maybe you were Hindu or Muslim, and you still kind of wanted to practice your traditions, and I'm just saying this for example, guys, I'm not saying those groups were doing it. I'm just trying to think of a modern day example to kind of make it relevant. But just imagine on Christian days of worship, you can mix in your religious faith and kind of still be paying homage to your deities and gods kind of at the same time. And that's what happened through ancient times, and that's how come we kind of get Easter next to the Christian faith, and they're so intertwined together due to Christianity being made a state religion. But that was all great and everything, but we also get Laura Moon figuring out that because she's been killed by a god, which god is responsible for this. And Laura, in her mind, she already knows it. She pretty much has put it together. She's, Wednesday's connection with Shadow. She pretty much can see everything that's happening, everything that's going on. And, she basically wants Mad Sweeney to admit that it's him. And it's just so funny. She has him jacked up. She's holding him by his genitals up against the wall. And she's making him confess his Wednesday, right? And that was just so very funny to me. But he does, Mad Sweeney does confess that it is Wednesday. And of course, Laura has this new information, and we know she's going to do something with it. But then, guys, we get this showdown. It's a showdown between the old gods and the new gods, because, of course, we get Media, Technology Boy, and Mr. Roy. They're all at the party. And every time Media, played by Gillian Anderson, every time she comes in and is in an episode, I really like those episodes. They're really good episodes every time she's in it. And so those have been some of my favorite episodes. And I don't know what character she's playing. She may be playing a type of Scarlett O'Hara type of character, or some type of Southern Belle character or something like that. I just love all the little characters she breaks into in her representation of Media. But she's basically letting us know the deal pretty much that they have with Easter, and why Easter's been thriving so well and various things like that. But of course, Mr. Wednesday, he doesn't like it. He's there. He has his final showdown, or his, he has finally a big showdown with the, with the new gods, and we get to see like the full force of, Odin, and he's basically letting Shadow know who he is, and saying, "Do you believe?" And showing all these displays of power. He strikes down these faceless type of goons that always travel with Technology Boy and media, and he strikes them down. And basically they serve as a sacrifice to give Easter power in order to basically control and to take away spring. She gets her power back to be the goddess of spring and dawn and various things like that. And she just rips the land dry. Just very, very great scene. I love just the whole look of this episode. It looked really great. I don't know who does this show, American Gods. I want to look it up and find out who create the look of the show, the set designs, who do the the various art of the show. But whoever it is, they do an excellent job. Some of the best I've seen on television thus far. So we get basically the new gods, Mr. Rural, kind of manifesting himself over some of these faceless beings in a sense. And it kind of reminds me of the Matrix, how Agent Smith could just manifest himself throughout all the various people who were tied to the Matrix. And that's what Mr. World is doing. And, he's basically letting them know that this rolls in. Now, he's tried everything he could, that if they just want war, it's war that they're going to get, as Easter's pretty much holding spring hostage until they meet their demands. And guys, just an awesome episode. I mean, they just did an excellent job. I was very satisfied with this week's episode. Laura Moon is basically we cut to the ending scene, and Laura Moon is basically saying that she would like to have a word with Mr. Wednesday. So guys, after finding out Mr. Wednesday's been behind this all, it really changes how we look at Mr. Wednesday. Is he the good guy in this, or is he the bad guy in this? The tactics he's using and a lot of the methods he's using, has me thinking that maybe Shadow's thrown in with the wrong group of gods here. He's become fond of Wednesday. They've sticking together. But what's gonna, as Laura has this information and as she reveals it, is Mr. Wednesday gonna still have Shadow's support? And especially after Shadow finds out that everything that's been happening to them up to this point is his doing, that these things wouldn't have happened had it not been for Mr. Wednesday. Because had they not been caught and Shadow went to prison, even the situation with Laura sleeping with his best friend Robbie, that one would have not occurred. And I remember on some of my earlier episodes, I was thinking that when Laura kept saying that she had this perfect plan and it shouldn't have went wrong, even though we didn't know for certain, I had said in the earlier episodes or the earlier reviews that Mr. Wednesday more than likely has something to do with that. And that's where I was going with it. But guys, to me, this is probably my second favorite episode. I think Lemon Senate U but it's between this one and Lemon Senate U in episode 2 with Mr. Nancy. Those three are my favorite throughout the entire series. I don't know who's number one yet. It'd have to be between this one and Lemon Senate U. I just loved how they did Lemon Senate U and introduced everybody. But then I love this being a companion to that. And like I was saying, guys, I really love staying on the main story. There seems to be quite a bit we can see now in episode 2. Also, we got Bilquis at the end. She's on a bus, and my thoughts are she's headed to where they are. And at this point, Bilquis is looking like she is on the side of the new god. She tried to seduce Technology Boy, but Technology Boy made this funny comment about how he doesn't want to be in her vagina universe that he feels he's in a better place as it is, as he is, and so she can't seduce him. She can't do, she doesn't have any power over him. So she's kind of in a rock and a hard place, and so she's basically trying to do the biddings, I would imagine, of the new gods at this point. Kind of obligated to them, but as we can see, it is possible for old gods to break their contracts with the new gods and go to war with them, as Easter seemingly has done. And so just because she's kind of throwing her lot in with them doesn't necessarily mean, so kind of hard to figure out what side she's on now. And looks like she was headed to the house on the rock. People who read the books, as I understand it, they know a lot about that. And guys, I started the books, but there is like 90% of the things about the book I still don't know. And it's been a real treat for me. I appreciate that because I'm still like a kid for the first time witnessing something with wonder. And I appreciate that. Yeah, you can never get that feeling back with wonder. But if you have read the books, I'm kind of at the same time envious of that because I would like to know more about this, and I'm still tempted to read the books in the off season, as I said I would, but then I kind of don't want to. I want to be surprised at the same time. So guys, I don't know what I'm going to do yet with that, but I will say, from my understanding of a lot of TV to book adaptations, you've read the books and you can't get that wonder quite like some of. I would say that a lot of these book adaptations to TV, or they change a lot. The TV, they do something with different characters, or they combine characters and various things like that. So even if I do read the books and get more information, it could be that I'm still in a great sense of wonderment and surprise. But anyway, guys, that's my review for the week. The finale of American Gods. It's been a pleasure, guys. I've really enjoyed doing these reviews. I appreciate you guys who tuned in from the very first episode with me. If you got it, hey, during the off season, go back and watch some of my earlier reviews. See what my thoughts were on these earlier reviews, compared to some of the others that's been done by other TV show reviewers. Maybe you get a little bit more information or a little bit different way of looking at it, or maybe not. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Guys, if you like content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, guys, take care.